are again to talk books. I've been reading the most fabulous book, Floundering by Romy Ash. I actually feel really lucky and privileged to have found this book. It's a debut novel. She was shortlisted for the Vogel last year. This is a story. I was going to say a lovely story. It's not quite lovely, but it is a story about Tom and Geordie, these brothers that have been deserted by their mother. They're living with their gran and grandpa, and she comes back, virtually kidnaps them, takes them from school, and throws them in a car and drives across the Nullarbor. It's full of suspense. It's almost a thriller.
Yeah. It creeps up on you, doesn't it?
It really creeps up on you. I mean, I was absolutely like, what is going to happen next?
They don't know where their mother is taking them, why they're being taken, and as they move west, there's this mounting sense of dread.
This small little car, this intense little atmosphere in the car against this sort of the heat in this vast expanse of sort of desert and sky, just kind of, you know, as it sort of goes into the distance to the inevitable end of the world, which is the West Coast.
And her description of the landscape, it's not just, you know, pages and pages of description.
No.
The landscape comes in when the characters interact with the landscape.
Absolutely.
She's a very talented author and one to watch, but a couple of things that just didn't ring true for me. I thought the voice failed on a couple of occasions.
I don't agree.
Yeah, where
I thought she carried it all the way through.
This is an example of where the sort of literary metaphorical language clashes with the kind of colloquial language of the... Tom says, the heat is crouched down around us. I look over at Nev's van, but I can't see no one there. And I read that and I just went, well, why wouldn't you just say, I can't see anyone there? It is an editorial thing, but it is something that...
It doesn't take away from the whole story.
But it is something that marks it.
The journey is a story.
I do understand what Lockie means there. I do understand.
The other thing that I would have liked in it was some moments of humour or lightness.
There was no humour.
It was kind of intensity. Intensity to the point where you're just going, what is going to happen?
I was feeling the whole time, ring your grandma, ring your grandma. Do you feeling that? I mean, you know, from early on, from when she first takes them, I think get to a phone.
But they're with their mother. They're not supposed to feel like that. They're supposed to feel trust and you know, that everything is going to be all right.
They don't have any water, they don't have any food, they don't have any clothing. I mean, you know, but they're you know, they're kids.
The book I read recently and absolutely adored was How to Be a Woman by Caitlin Moran.
It goes without saying that George Eliot, Virginia Woolf.
Authors like Anita Diamont and Lionel Shriver are the women who are writing about real stuff.
Well, I've gone back. I've gone back to my bookshelves and I've picked up the 2005 memoir of Kate Holden, and it charts the story of her 5 years as a heroin addict and a prostitute. Kate was a shy, introverted girl. She grew up in suburban, middle-class Melbourne. She eventually went to uni. She studied literature. She loved books. And she did everything that you do at uni, you know. She went to parties. She fell in love. She fell out of love. She got dumped. She joined a band. She experimented with drugs. The next step into heroin was just like the next step into, say, an opium den of the 19th century. You know, and it was sort of alluring in that way to her. But that was the sort of start of the inevitable down spiral into denial, delusion, addiction. And so we see over 5 years her on the street, in brothels, rehab.
Yeah, it didn't work for me. I didn't get to know her.
Right.
There was no, I didn't get a sense of her at all. I felt it was really cold. I felt the sex was abrasive. I thought that, I mean, the people that just I warmed to were her family, her mother, her father. They broke my heart.
She wasn't asking for our forgiveness. She wasn't writing it like a confessional. She was just sort of saying, this is how it was. In my skin. She enjoyed
But she
giving
was
that
almost
service.
robotic in some sense, and I couldn't really get a reason
I didn't
why
think
she
so
was
at
doing
all.
I mean,
I didn't think so at all.
Is that interesting? Two males and a female perspective.
Well, you look at this is the current cover, and you know this kind of thing is designed to suggest that it's slightly tittillating.
It's not erotic.
Oh, it's not.
But this is not. It's not at all. I remember when this came out, and I didn't want to read it. Because, well, you know, it was at the time all the hooker memoirs were coming out, and I thought, well, what do I want to read that for? And I'm so glad. I'm so glad I finally did.
I actually wish I hadn't read it, Michael, but that's okay.
the Brontes, Jane Austen, just for what they did, the barriers that they broke down.
Dorothy L. Sayers. I'm a huge fan of her Peter Wimsey stories.
This could be a bit controversial. I actually don't read enough women writers.
This is an amazing novel.
It is.
Jesmyn Ward's Salvage the Bones. I discovered this recently through the Sydney Writers' Festival, but she actually won the US National Book Award for it last year. It's another young narrator, a 15-year-old Esh, who lives with her brothers and her father on the Gulf Coast of Mississippi outside New Orleans. The story takes place over 12 days before the disaster of Hurricane Katrina. It's a very small domestic story. These people live in absolute poverty. Mother died in childbirth to the youngest child, Junior, who's now 8. Esh, who's 15, she's pregnant. She's been effectively brought up by her 2 older brothers, Skeeter and Randall. Skeeter has this amazing, loving relationship with his pit bull terrier, China, who herself has just given birth to puppies. And you watch them prepare over several days for the arrival of what we know is going to be one of the worst natural disasters that has ever hit America. And yet they're preparing for it, you know, like it's another storm. And the father's, you know, alternately drunk or off, and you reading it with a sort of a mounting sense of horror that when the cyclone comes, the shit's going to hit the fan.
I mean, I love the writing style of this. It's muscular. There's a sort of like a fetid physicality about it. It's close in. It's humid. There's that mounting pressure of the cyclone coming in, and that sort of really intense kind of boiling point that's going to just
we know what's going to happen, but they don't.
I thought it was very similar to this book in style. Obviously not a similar story, but really quite similar in style. And isn't it that interesting that we both chose it for?
Yeah.
Well, I think I think motherhood is a key issue in both of those books. I mean, in Floundering, it's Loretta who is almost an absent or mostly an absent mother. The mother is dead in here, but then
we do have the mother of all storms.
The mother of all storms, Katrina.
But you've got children finding their way in terrible adversity. I mean, and I thought that they were the similarities, different backgrounds, but very similar struggles.
What I loved is that it's a reworking of the Medea myth, and it is one of the best reworkings of myth that I've read for a very long time in novel form. The sort of the brutality, the blood, the life, the death, the sort of at its extremes, and everything, and the world will get ripped apart by it all.
But the 15-year-old voice never fails, and you never doubt that it's a real voice.
She really is an exceptionally talented writer. I mean, I loved it.
So many times I nearly just put it down and walked away, but I couldn't. And so I'd say, yeah, Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand is my favourite.
Tamara Pierce. And when I was 13, I wanted to be a knight after reading her books. And I'm, like, really nerdy and bookish and not at all athletic.
Well, we're just about out of time.
But just before we go, out now, Tex, a small publishing house in Melbourne, has released 26 Australian classics, including Miles Franklin, who, of course, as a woman had to write under a male nom de plume, My Brilliant Career. They're also releasing They're a Weird Mob, Strine, Mystery of a Hansom Cab, Wake in Fright, a fantastic series of Australian books, and they're glad they're back on the shelves. And also, to give a bit of balance, the male writers. I have 2. Lives by Peter Robb, in which he there are encounters with a series of remarkable people where he evokes their inner lives. People like sort of Julian Assange, Ivan Milat, Fellini, Caravaggio. Really interesting.
Any women?
Yeah, there's a couple of women there. And also A History of Books by Gerald Murnane, a fictionalised autobiography in 30 chapters and 30 memories of books. Again, an interesting way to look at a life.
Thank you, Michael. Until next time.
See you then.
Looking forward to it.